Hi guys, welcome back to the Art of Server. So today's video is another vlog update video pertaining to the ongoing saga that is my R720 XD. So here we are, and guess what? I had to swap the original motherboard back into the server, and here's why. So if you saw my last video, I swapped the motherboard out because the original motherboard's not completing post. It gets stuck in the middle of post. I cannot boot any operating system or anything like that. And I thought the quickest solution would be to just replace the motherboard and get one that didn't have that problem. And so I did swap the motherboard, and that motherboard did work, by the way. The one I swapped in the last video, I powered it on. Everything seems to be working. I didn't fully test it out. I didn't load it up with all DIMMs and stuff like that, but for the most part, it seemed to be working. But the first thing I noticed after I powered it on was that it does not have the iDRAC Enterprise license. And that was something that I very, very specifically requested from the vendor that sold me that motherboard. I asked them before the sale, I said, I'm looking for a motherboard that has an iDRAC Enterprise license already installed. And I wanted also, something that's fully not damaged and obviously with the mini slot ejectors fully intact. They said no problem, checked off all the check marks. So I placed the order. And then when I placed the order, I also left a message saying, just a reminder, I specifically am buying this because you said this has the iDRAC Enterprise license on it, and that the motherboard was not damaged and had the ejectors for the mini monolithic slot fully intact. And asked them that, if they can't confirm that, please don't ship the motherboard. They shipped it and said no problem. Okay. So, but unfortunately, that motherboard does not have the iDRAC Enterprise license. So anyway, I contacted the vendor. They said, well, we're so sorry. We made a mistake. You can ship the motherboard back for a full refund. So I guess that's my, backup option because, yeah, that would be fine, I suppose, if that was the only option. But, it still doesn't help me solve the problem of getting a working R720 XD server. But thanks to some of you guys who left some comments in my community post when I made a quick post saying that the Enterprise iDRAC license wasn't on that motherboard. Some of you mentioned that it is possible to migrate the iDRAC license from the old motherboard to the new motherboard. All I have to do, I guess, is to program the service tag to be identical to the old motherboard, and then I can export the iDRAC license and import it into the new motherboard. But in order to do that, I have to power on the old motherboard because I wasn't thinking ahead and didn't actually even know that that was a possibility. So now I had to put the old motherboard back into the server in order to power it on to get to the iDRAC interface. Now the fortunate thing is that this motherboard is not completely dead. If it was completely dead, I don't think that would be an option. But the motherboard still does power on, it just does not complete boot, but I can still get onto the iDRAC interface. So in this scenario, I actually think this might work. So I'm going to try to extract the iDRAC license and the service tag information, all that stuff, with the old original motherboard that's currently in the server. And then I'm going to uninstall this again and reinstall the new motherboard and see if I can migrate that license to the new motherboard. And if so, then that will solve my problems. So anyway, I thought I'd make a video showing how to do this. Actually, I don't really know how to do it yet. I'm going to try to do it. I'm going to record it. And if I'm successful, then hopefully it's helpful to somebody else who might need to do something like this. So anyway, before I get started, do me a favor, guys. Smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm so more people can get to see this video. And if you're new to the channel and you like this sort of stuff, consider subscribing to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss my videos. All right, guys, I'm going to get on to my desktop and let's log into the iDRAC interface and see if we can successfully do this. All right, guys, so I have my web browser opened up and connected to the iDRAC interface on the original motherboard. So let me go ahead and log in. All right, so let's scroll down here. And here is the service tag and express service code information. So I want to definitely save that. So I'm going to go ahead and just take a screenshot of that. And I'll save that. All right. And so down here you can see that I already have the enterprise license on this motherboard. And I want to see if I can transfer that license over to the replacement motherboard. So I'm going to go ahead and click on licenses here. And over here, I'm going to select export. And it looks like it just automatically saved a XML file to my downloads folder. So that's going to be the iDRAC license that I can then import into the new motherboard, so long as I have the matching service tag information programmed into the new that replacement motherboard. So all right, I'm going to go ahead and unplug this machine now and put the replacement motherboard back into this R720XD and see if we can complete the next step, which is to import this iDRAC license into that replacement motherboard. Alright guys, so I just replaced the motherboard and fired up the system. I am booting off of a USB drive that has CentOS 7 already pre-installed. So just to kind of show you that here, you can see that I have CentOS 7.9 running here. And I have these two SSH terminals where I've already connected to the server and escalated to root. And so before we move forward, I just want to say that there's a few things that are already pre-installed on my USB drive. So for anybody who's doing this from scratch, I just want to mention that you need to install the Dell racadm tool. And so you'll notice that if I do which racadm, it's available to me. The default install of CentOS or any other Linux distribution is probably not going to have these Dell related tools pre-installed. So you can look up on Google or whatever on the instructions on how to install racadm, Dell's utilities and stuff like that for your particular OS. But anyway, I just want to mention that that is a requirement. So the other requirement is that you need to make sure that the Dell Systems Management base driver and stuff like that are available in your kernel. And so, for example, let's look at DBAS. All right, so this is one of the drivers, and I already have this module in the kernel that I'm booting, so that's not a problem. You want to make sure that that module is loaded. Okay, so in my case it is. And then the other one that you want to make sure is available is the Dell BIOS image update driver, I guess. That you may not actually need since we're not doing any BIOS updates, but it's all part of the same package. But in the end, what you're really looking for is, and you need this because the tools you're going to use to update the service tag is going to interact with this interface. But so if you look under /sys/devices/platform /dcdbas, here you want to make sure that there is a SMI request file here, and that's because the tool we're going to use to change the service tag is going to require that. So these are just some of the requirements you want to make sure your system has before you move forward. All right, so the utility that I'm going to be using to update the service tag, which I have in my screenshot over here. Let's see. All right, so the service tag I'm going to be using is 6v44fx1. So let me just I'll put that back down. The utility I'm going to be using is called smbios-sys-info, and that is part of a package that you might not have installed, and I don't have it available here. So just to kind of show you that smbios-sys-info is not available. Okay, so in order to make that available, we have to install it, and I believe you can install it for CentOS 7. The package is smbios utils python. So let's go ahead and just install that here. All right, so with that done, I should now have this. Yep, so here we are. So I think I can just run --service-tag to kind of see. All right, so there's my service tag. I'm not very familiar with this particular tool, so I just want to take a look here, see what else we have. So it looks like I can set asset tag. So that's the tool I'm going to use to set the service tag. And for racadm, I'm going to be using that to view the license. So for example, it tells me right now that I have the iDRAC embedded. You know, basically there's no enterprise license. If there was an enterprise license on this motherboard, you would see additional lines that start with like license number 1, and then, you know, more details of the enterprise license here. But all we see here is basically the iDRAC Express. So, and then you'll also see that the unique identifier is basically the service tag. Let's go ahead and set the service tag. All right, so in my case, I'm going to want to set this to 6v44fx1. Okay, so that is now set. And for that to take effect, so if you actually run the read operation, you'll notice that it hasn't actually changed yet, and that's because a reboot is required. So let me go ahead and reboot this machine. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and log into the server after the reboot. All right, so let's see if I do racadm license view, let's take a look at that. So now you'll notice the unique identifier matches the previous, the original service tag of the motherboard I replaced. And I think if we do the smbios-sys-info service tag, we should see the same result. Okay, so now that we have the service tag switched over to the original service tag of this machine, I need to import the iDRAC license, which is this XML file that we exported from the original motherboard. Now, when I exported this from the original motherboard, I was using the web interface, right? And that seemed to work fine, but I think the iDRAC version of this machine is a little old, because, and let me just kind of show you what I was just checking out a little earlier. So it's having an SSL connection error, and I suppose I could probably troubleshoot this and figure out exactly what the problem is, or maybe update the firmware of the iDRAC. I'm guessing that that would probably bring it up to more recent protocol version and cipher settings. But instead of doing all that, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to use the racadm tool to import that license. So I'm just going to go ahead and transfer this file over to the server. So the file is on my desktop. I'm going to copy that over. Oops. Okay, so I should have that file now, right? Okay, right there. So the way to import the license using racadm is to run this command. All right, so racadm license import -f and followed by the path to the XML license file -c idrac.embedded.1. Sorry, let's see if this succeeds. All right, license manager action succeeded. So that looks promising. All right, so let's do license view. All right, so yeah, there you can see here is the original information for the iDRAC Express. Then we now have license 1, status is okay, and this is now the enterprise license applied to the machine. All right, so at this point, I think I should be able to reset the iDRAC, and hopefully it's going to use the independent iDRAC port for its IP interface. All right, so I just reset the iDRAC. I'm going to give it a few minutes for it to kind of restart, and hopefully I should see it come up on its own iDRAC interface. Hey guys, so after resetting the iDRAC, it did not come up on the dedicated interface, and I just realized that there's actually another setting I probably need to change. So I've rebooted the machine, and I'm in the system setup BIOS menu basically. And so under here, I'm going to go to iDRAC settings, and maybe it's under network. Let's check this out. Yeah, so let's see here. I think the NIC selection, it's basically sharing the onboard gigabit NIC right now. And so I want to switch it over here to enterprise dedicated port. So I'm hoping that that's going to allow this to work the way I was hoping it would, or at least the way it worked with the previous motherboard. So I want to make sure that DHCP is enabled here, because that's how it's going to have to get the address. So yeah, so that looks like it's enabled. So hopefully, all right, let's go ahead and finish and save changes. Yes. All right. All right, so that's gonna reboot the machine, and we'll see how it goes. All right, guys, so for whatever reason, I could not get the iDRAC interface on the dedicated NIC to come up with DHCP. I'm not really sure what's going on there, but I ended up setting a static IP address on it, so I'll just kind of show you that. I'm SSH into the server right now. Get NIC config. Okay, so you can see that I have DHCP disabled now, and I just basically set a static address. So that seems to work. I am able to reach that interface. So let me just kind of get out of the server and ping 242 so you can see that I can reach it on the network. Now, I'm still having that same problem as I did earlier. If you use a modern browser, there's some SSL cipher mismatch and all that stuff. So I decided actually I'm going to use kind of the old trick that I've shown you guys in the past, where you can just basically run an old version of Firefox. And so that's what I have right here. This is Firefox 33. And so I think at the end of the day, I probably really just need to update the iDRAC firmware and reset some things and stuff like that. But for now, for the purpose of kind of wrapping up this video, I decided just want to connect to the iDRAC using at least an old version of Firefox, so you can kind of see. One thing I did notice as soon as I connected here is that the iDRAC is still identifying itself here, at least with the old service tag. So I'm not really sure how to change that. But on the system itself, if you do the racadm license view, you can see that it's accepting the new service tag from the previous motherboard, and the license is bound to that service tag. And so this all seems to be working fine. But for whatever reason, right here, it's still showing the old service tag, and maybe there's a setting, maybe this is a separate setting that I need to change. But all right, anyway, let's go ahead and log in here. All right, so here you can see that the service tag is indeed changed to the one that matched my the original motherboard. And of course, the version of iDRAC here is, I think, really, really old. And so I definitely have to update that at some point. But anyway, if we go to licenses, under here, you can see that the enterprise license is indeed active. And if I go under iDRAC settings, you can see also that the NIC selection mode is dedicated. And unfortunately, This IPv4 interface, I just could not get it to work with DHCP, and I'm not really sure why. But when I set a static address to it, obviously I'm connecting to it right now, and that's over that dedicated NIC. So basically confirms that the iDRAC license is in effect. But anyway, I think I'm going to go ahead and keep this motherboard so long as all the other testing. I'm going to load the whole system up with all the DIMM slots, CPU, all that stuff, just to make sure that everything is working fine. And if so, I think I'm going to go ahead and keep this motherboard so that I have a working R720XD, then to return it and try to get something else. Alright guys, that's it for today's video. If you found this video helpful, be sure to give it that thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel and you like this sort of stuff, consider subscribing to the channel. Also, if you want to support my channel, go check out my eBay store. I'll leave a link down in the video description. I've got the best selection of pre-flashed IT mode HBA SAS controllers for your TrueNAS, ZFS, or Unraid builds, so go check out my store down in the video description. Thank you very much for watching and have a great day. Bye bye.